And if I want to go and bring up some of the panelists up here for some of the various suppliers, would come on up. We'll start that conversation here in a second. As they're coming up, one of the things I want to point out, of course, with TCG now, we have a cloud and solutions engineering team. Right now, it's a team of one, by the way, but that will change. There's definitely a commitment within Dan Perigian and the executive staff. Let's look at, continue to expand that and grow that as you guys demand more and more from that process, right? So again, that's something that will definitely change. Again, 3 main roles: education, things like this, or it could be one-on-one trainings with you and your individual staffs. Then secondly, assistance with routing you to the correct suppliers. If you have questions, you've got a list of requirements, we can certainly get engaged, make sure that we route you to the correct suppliers. And then last but not least, engineering assistance actually with live calls. So, if you have an opportunity, not even sure where to go with it, I can have a vendor neutral conversation from an engineering perspective with your clients with you. So help sell with you as opposed to kind of assuming you can kind of figure it out. And if you need that additional assistance, glad to help out and get engaged with that. So definitely here to help. So, and again, my full contact info is there. So if you need me and want to get in touch with me to have some of the services, glad to help out there. So, and again, we have an entire rich technology stack, anything from cloud compute to voice and collaboration, networking, security, IoT and wireless, and even managed services. So we got an entire rich technology stack at your disposal to be able to sell with. But of course, today we're here to talk about networking, but predominantly SD-Wan. And how that can help you uncover not only networking and SD-WAN type conversations, but it certainly should drive you into other areas of technology. For instance, we start talking through this, one of the things to kind of think about right off the bat is, it's all about the applications, how they access those applications, that customer experience associated with those applications, right? And so the fundamentals, of course, of IT have shifted dramatically over the last 5 or 6 years. As you look at how that shifted, it's now, instead of everything being on-prem like we used to have it, most of the services, or a lot of the services, are now being delivered across the internet itself, across the cloud path, right? So, if you kind of think about in the past life, if I had a 5-site type of environment, these 5 sites might interconnect with MPLS going back to the central headquarters, so across private networks to access things like Exchange, or it might be things like PeopleSoft or QuickBooks or some sort of CRM and accounting software. It might be things like other services and an on-prem type PBX and things like that. And then from there, it would take you out to the internet from that central headquarters, right? But nowadays, each site typically needs to go directly to the internet because they're accessing things across the web instead. So it's things like Office 365. Is there a reason to take a site like Charlotte that's coming down to Florida because the headquarters are down here? Exchange isn't here now, it's up in the cloud. So have Charlotte go directly to the cloud instead to gain access to those services. So it's definitely changed dramatically over the last several years in terms of how people deliver services. So is SD-WAN the answer? And we're going to spend just a minute, maybe 30 seconds. Maybe we'll start down with Ron if you want to. Maybe again who you are and maybe just a real quick snippet, maybe 30 seconds on Ariaka.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ron Beer. I'm the VP for the North American Partner Channel for Ariaka. And Ariaka is not a new company. We've been around for 12 years. The SD-WAN space has obviously evolved since we started a great deal. But we're a global wide area network company that can does connectivity through our software-defined offering, and there's a lot more to it, and hopefully we'll get into that a little bit.
Absolutely, we'll definitely get into it. Maybe next up, you want to go next?
Sure. My name is Darren French. I'm a VP of Business Development for Zero Outages, and we are an SD-N company, software-defined networking, and we provide SD-WAN and SASE services.
So you're saying you're sassy over there? Is that?
We can be sassy.
You don't look as sassy as some.
I'm not so sassy, but there are others that are sassy.
And you may look more sassy here, so you want to go next, Erica?
Hi, my name is Erica Edhouse. I am the Director of Channel Sales for Fat Pipe Networks, the original creators and founders of SD-WAN technology. 28 years ago, we launched and deployed the first ever SD-WAN network, and I'll tell you about the evolution of SD-WAN since then.
So should we change it instead of FAT to PHAT? Or
You could, absolutely.
Good deal. Well, I tell you what, next up, you're going to probably have to share the mic here. Sorry about that. But if you want to go next, Fusion.
Absolutely. George Rosado, Solutions Engineer with Fusion Connect, and we are a managed service provider providing full end-to-end solution for the connected enterprise, right? Providing services such as managed SD-Wan, access, UCaaS, really all the services to provide that full end-to-end solution for our customers.
Good, good, and we'll definitely get into that. Let me just spend a couple of minutes. One of the things, why SD-WAN? Well, first and foremost, there's a ton of money in this stuff, right? I mean, you're looking here at one of the articles I pulled up, and this is just one of, hundreds of articles when you Google, looking at the SD-WAN market space, but the Del Aurora Group talked about 168% growth in SD-WAN. 168% year over year from now to 2024. 3.2 billion, that's B with a, billion with a B. So a huge amount of, just think about taking just a little bit of that and going down that path. So again, some of the questions we'll be asking today is, what is SD-WAN? And then why should my customers care about that stuff, right? We'll talk about that a little bit with the panelists. We'll also talk about, does SD-WAN always save me money, or does it always save my customers money? And I think that's a mixed question. I would say right off the bat, it's not always going to save you money. In some cases, it might be more expensive. But you're going to get a tremendous amount more functionality and better application performance in most cases. So we'll talk through that a little bit. Again, who's the best SD-WAN provider? It's one of those things, I get the question nonstop. I've been in this industry for a while, so I get people calling me up. A lot of partners call me and say, hey, Gary, who's the best SD-WAN provider out there? Now, I'm sure every one of these will answer yes, right? But there's definitely different situations that may require different SD-WAN providers. They do things a little different based on the technology on the back-end side. And then also, is SD-WAN, what is all this fuss about? So we'll talk about that a little bit with the panels here in just a minute. So, and I'm not going to go through this a lot, but other than to note that SD-WAN and the different providers have different architectures on the back-end side. And they may get into some of this. If not, we're going to talk about some of this. I've actually got a webinar coming up on the 29th of the month where I'm going to go through some of the architecture and how different ones use different architecture and how that might look. And then we'll follow it on with one on the July 15th and where we'll go and expose and talk through that with some of the suppliers themselves. But you'll notice some of these guys will implement and actually integrate much better with MPLS. Others say, we just want to rip and replace MPLS and go down a path like that. Others actually have, believe it or not, they actually take, the last mile, use the internet to actually send all the data up to their data center. And in some cases, they'll actually ride a private network on the back end side and go out the other side with it. So it's not just your mama's SD-WAN, so to speak. It's definitely a little different. Each provider does things a little different that we'll get into a little bit here in a few minutes. But the architecture is a little bit different. But the big thing here, as we talked about, is you have more and more services being delivered directly to the internet. There's no reason to have an internal MPLS coming back to a private internal network to then traverse the network, right? So you might as well go directly, each site go directly through the internet. And that's really what SD-WAN is, right? It's using internet circuits as opposed to simply using private circuits now. Now, obviously, if you're interconnecting internal sites, you've got to then encrypt data and provide security and all those sort of things with it. But it do things like load balancing. You also start asking the question, from a billing perspective, if I had 50 sites and it's all MPLS, who do I call if there's an issue? Right? You at least know who to call when there's issues, whereas now there might be 8, 10, 12 different internet providers. So do I care about that kind of stuff in making a decision who to use from an SD-WAN perspective? Do I need to think about things like aggregation on the circuit side? Do I need to worry about managing those circuits maybe from an SD-WAN perspective and looking at those sort of things? So again, lots of things like that to kind of think about. We'll get into a little bit with the panelists here today. But more and more as you're driving towards the cloud path, if your customers are talking about going to Office 365 or Azure or AWS or they've got a hosted voice solution, one of the natural next questions should be, what are you doing from a connectivity perspective? And does it still fit what they're trying to do today or not? Looking down the path of that. So, and if you start having an SD-WAN discussion, it kind of leads into the next panel, at 2 o'clock, and that is, what are you doing from a security perspective? Some SD-WAN providers provide it directly into their solutions. Some actually require third parties, which is all well and good. So again, there's not a wrong answer, but again, I think some of those are some of the questions we'll get into today. So some of the 5 key considerations, where are they at with their applications and cloud journey, right? Where do those applications sit? which should uncover other opportunities down the path. It's not just an SD-WAN and connectivity discussion, right? What's their current network and geography look like? You know, do they have MPLS today? Is it private circuits? You know, how long are those contracts up? Is it going to be another 2 years before they can replace that stuff out? Do you need to integrate with that? Network management and billing we talked about. Obviously security, in the past, you know, I might have one site that went out to the internet in an MPLS environment. Whereas now all of a sudden, if I've got, you know, 5 locations, I probably have 5 locations now, at least with 1, if not 2 internet connections now. So that security has to be spread out and looked at in some form or fashion. So, and again, is a customer simply looking to save money? So having said that, let's take a quick look here, and you know, I'll start Ariaka on your side, Ron. I mean, you guys have been around a while, and I know, you know, talking about architecturally a little bit, I mean, you know, one of the things you guys do really well is you're definitely very international in flavor and have a lot of different options when it comes to even overseas and different opportunities like that where it may be a fit. So maybe talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, we definitely built the reputation of the company on being a global provider, which was kind of good, but also a little bit of a curse for us too, because people didn't look at us for the domestic opportunities. We've done a lot in the last year to change that. We've come out with regional products that really focus on, you don't necessarily need that global entity. You don't need that office overseas. If you just have 5, 6, 7, 8 locations here in the United States, we can do that very well now. So that's been a big, real evolution for our company. You know, the network is as rock solid as gets. It's a global, you know, global layer 2 network that's privately owned by us. You know, the only thing you use the public internet for is to get from the customer prem to our POP. We're adding POPs all the time. I think we just added our 38th POP. 40th POP, thank you, in Tel Aviv. And I think we had one more, didn't we, somewhere in where? Dublin, Ireland, thank you, in Dublin, Ireland. So we're constantly adding these POPs all over the world. And that's what, like I said, made the company, but the fact that we can now be very competitive on these domestic opportunities, even on we just sold a 2-location deal.
Wow.
I mean, you know, that's something we would never have looked at 6 or 8 months ago. But what it does is it gets the partner used to thinking about us. Hey, they did a 2-site deal for us. Nobody's going to get rich on that. Nobody's making a lot of money. But now when that 20, 30, 40 site comes up, they think of us first.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, I always thought at Ariaka, you go back 5 years ago, 4 years ago, it's typically international, typically a huge number of sites.
Yep.
You know, that was kind of what I thought of. I also thought about things like application acceleration. You guys did a really good job on the application space and making sure you got a quality experience there. So maybe talk about that, but again, I think you talked about it, almost a curse though, that now you've kind of been branded the enterprise guy, and again, just reiterating what you said,
I mean,
you also can do small and
our
mid.
our application acceleration is really one of the main things that we do. I mean, you know, everybody's running apps every day on their business. They can't afford for those things to be failing or running slowly. So with our network, again, it's our own network. We own it. Our ANAPs, our Ariaka network application devices. You know, those are all proprietary products that we developed. So we can get those out anywhere in the world. You know, we made our bones, to use an old term, in China. I mean, very frankly, that's where we cut our teeth and we became so successful. And we can still do that. Our equipment is on the ground in China. We can get somebody up and running within 72 hours in China, which is pretty unheard of. That same service and technology is now what we can do here domestically on any size opportunity.
Yeah, great. And so, yeah, I mean, I always thought about that, the applications, the enterprise. So you guys obviously have kind of come down from that and allowed, you know, to become much more flexible with some of the architecture stuff. But
I did want to make one more point. You brought up before about how customers now are looking for a provider. You know, they need the connectivity. They need they need the network. Well, you know, I'm trying to use a term now. You know, we don't want to be the one throat to choke. We want to be the one hand to shake.
oh,
Okay.
I was going to say one back to pat.
No.
One back to pat.
Well, that's good too. We'll take that one too.
That one.
But you know, because we can really supply the whole thing from the customer, from soup to nuts. We can do the last mile for them if
Okay.
they need it. And you know, we never step on the toes of our agents. We know, look, all of our agents, they develop their businesses on selling last mile. All right, so if they can do it, great. We have no problem with that. But when you do get into those international situations, we can probably do a little bit better, source it, price it, and manage it. The other great thing is, even if you don't get the last mile from us, we can still manage it for you.
Yeah, good deal. I tell you what, let's switch gears a little bit. Maybe let's talk to zero outages for just a second. what should customers think about from a zero outages? I mean, obviously, the name kind of gives it away, zero outages, but maybe, what makes you guys unique in the SD-WAN space?
Yeah, so what makes us unique is we're a strategic partner with Sophos. All of our services that we provide incorporate security. So our SD-WAN service integrates security from end to end in most cases. We can sell the SD-WAN standalone, but it's still based on that Sophos platform. So if you wanted to add security later on, it's very easy to do.
So you've kind of built your platform, so to speak, directly on a security platform to begin with, right? Is kind of what I'm hearing?
That's right, yeah. We're Sophos's first, and I believe still only, cloud provider for their solutions. So we've basically taken their solutions, integrated them into our cloud, and now offer those as a service to our partners.
Yeah, and you used the word SASE a minute ago. What the heck is SASE, and why should I care about that?
So SASE is basically a security component that's added on to an SD-WAN kind of deployment, so that you can extend security all the way, typically to the edge. And Sophos has the #1 rated ransomware endpoint solution today, and so we offer that to through most of our agents today. That's a very popular product. If you're not selling endpoint to customers today, you should be, because ransomware is such a big deal. It's an easy way to sell additional services to them today.
Yeah, and nobody cares about security, right? I mean, that's just like an afterthought, right? And one of the things, again, I always talk about with SD-WAN, it absolutely should be the next question out of anybody's mouth is, well, what are you doing from a security perspective? And some SD-WAN providers kind of leave that to third parties. Some will do it in-house. Some will expect the customer to do it. And part of it, somebody needs to do it. The customer, in many cases, may actually have. And maybe the question is, if you run into a customer that says, you know what, zero outages, I already have standards in place, and I must use these sets of firewalls, these sets of rules, and things like that. I mean, how do you deal with that if they already have a security play in place, or a security policy if it's a larger customer that says, thou shalt use, X number or this type of firewall or this type of security platform?
Yeah, that's fine. The way that we've designed our services is to layer on top. Our SD-WAN sits in front, typically of an existing firewall. So what we're doing is we're adding on. So we're adding additional layers of security. That customer may just have basic firewall services today. They may have firewall services with content filtering, but maybe they don't have secure gateway. Maybe they don't have endpoint. So we can add on security services in that manner. And it's a great way to layer into an existing customer. Or if you're working with an MSP, you're a telecom agent working with an MSP, you can sell into that MSP these additional add-on services that they may not be providing today. And again, it's all offered as a monthly service, just like all other telecom services.
Yeah, no, sounds great. And kind of switching gears a little bit from a fat pipe perspective, what do you guys do a little bit different? You mentioned, I think, 28 years, which is kind of phenomenal. So maybe give a little bit of a history lesson and why go fat pipe and why that matters, the history there.
Absolutely. So our first customer was an RFP for the federal government, the FBI specifically, and we won that RFP.
Wow.
They are still our customer today, 28 years ago. So if we can maintain a customer like the FBI for 28 years, I think it says a little something about us and our technology. I think the big foundation is, though, the differentiator with fat pipe is that we're able to do things in our device that others have to run to a cloud to deliver. So we have a patent on what we call smart DNS. I call it my golden egg because it's the gift that keeps on giving. 28 years later, I still sell it every day. But what it does is it allows the fat pipe to perform the role of the authoritative domain server on the customer's prem. So we're not forced to hop to a cloud, which means we can reduce the latency, and the application performance is incentivized by that. So the performance is better, there's less vulnerabilities in the network, and we use half the WAN to route back on the inbound. So our inbound load balancing requires half the bandwidth to facilitate.
Oh,
so
wow.
if you're ever trying to unseat someone else, another MSP or another provider in an opportunity, and you're head-to-head, and any of my competitors are in there, if you bring a fat pipe solution, we can deliver with a lot less WAN. So we'll help you win that ROI case.
Yeah, so it sounds like, and I'm sure some of the sales partners in here in the room talk about this sometimes. Why go fat pipe, or for that matter, why go any SD-WAN provider as opposed to just buying the hardware and doing it yourself? I mean, can I just do it myself and go out and buy something and get it done that way? Or
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to accomplish that inbound, multi-IP inbound management that we deliver. So we're able to take something that's coming in on, say, a Comcast circuit on an inbound access and deliver it to an AT&T circuit. I can actually take a packet that's live from one carrier on an inbound to another. Everyone else can do it on the outbound. Outbound load balancing is a common standard in SD-WAN practice, but that inbound load balancing, so your remote office workers, accessing your DNS, maybe you have a large customer base that enters your website for processing of any kind or sort, we're able to do that in a flat network topology.
Yeah,
That's the big
and
difference.
maybe a question or two to help uncover SD-WAN opportunities that you can think of. If I'm a sales partner, maybe never sold SD-WAN, maybe think of some ways in which I can uncover some of those opportunities, if you would.
Absolutely. My favorite question, and this is applicable for all of us, is what's your tolerance for downtime? If you asked a customer what their tolerance is for downtime, and they have a 0 tolerance or a very low tolerance for downtime, then your next question is, what does it cost you to be down? Have you calculated what the cost of your environment being offline is? And once you know what that cost is, then you know what the value is that you bring to the table with an SD-WAN solution.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we kind of hinted at that a little bit earlier when we talked about moving the cloud. And if people are moving the cloud, all of a sudden, you take a contact center type of a cloud environment. In the past, they had SIPs and other things coming inbound to be able to do that sort of thing. But now all of a sudden, they got to reach the internet to access that voice, right? So making sure that those services stay up and running is probably more critical as they move to the cloud as well. So connectivity now is becoming more and more critical. So maybe speaking of that from a Fusion perspective, what makes you guys unique? What do you guys do a little bit different? I know you do some of this aggregation, some of these sort of things as well, and have a lot of services. But maybe from an SD-WAN, what kind of sets you guys apart compared to the others, I guess?
Absolutely. We use a multi-vendor approach to provide the best platform, best solution, right, for the customer's needs, right? Whether that's, load balancing or certain optimization, adding on security, depending on the feature, we can provide kind of the best of breed solution, that fits the needs. Also, we have years of industry experience, so, we, full on service from end to end with our SD-WAN solution, providing, implementation support and lifestyle support throughout it. So, yeah, we're really happy with the services we provide.
Yeah, and maybe you mentioned you've got multi-vendor type solutions. Maybe talk about what are some of the solutions, because some of these guys here in the room get questions that, hey, do you provide Meraki's, or hey, do you provide this or that? Maybe what some of the name brands that you guys use in that multi-vendor solution, just out of curiosity.
Absolutely. We partner with Meraki, Velo Cloud, and then pretty recently Fortinet, which we're really happy with. And with all of those, we can provide security, add-on security there. So.
Yeah, some of those will have security built in, like the Fortinet's obviously, it's built on a firewall and a unified threat protection type of a platform, and now more SASE based, things like that as well. But then also you guys have other security options and things like that just in general above and beyond your SD-WAN offerings, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Our security add-on, right, for SD-WAN and other components, right, whether it's, software services or things like that, right, we can provide those really on all the aspects of the solution.
Yeah, and I think you also can do like managed Wi-Fi. There's other services that you guys can do as well.
Absolutely.
In that branch office or that main
Whether
headquarters.
It's absolutely managed wireless, managed Wi-Fi, right? We can, and that comes with a layer of security. We can put that in as well as, the UCAS solution and those other components there.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, sounds great. And kind of going back, maybe just open it up to the entire panel. Well, first off, any questions from the audience that you guys have so far? Any question you want to raise up? Not to put anybody on the spot, by the way, but if you've got questions, feel free to stop me. Definitely want to make this interactive, so if you've got questions, definitely stop me here. But maybe spend a minute or so. Maybe you mentioned a couple of questions. Or some other questions you guys can think of on the panel here that if I'm a newbie from a sales partner and maybe haven't sold SD-WAN before, what are some pitfalls I need to be aware of that customers they come back and question and some different things like that, kind of thinking out of the box a little bit.
I think there's two questions that's critical when you're talking to a potential customer. One is, where do you see your company in 3 to 5 years? Where is it going to evolve? Do you see it staying exactly where it is now? Normally, the answer is always going to be no. And that way, then you can take them through the evolution of what they've gone through. And you know, we've done this a couple of times with a slide that we have. It's actually Darwin's theory of evolution. And then you've seen it, Gary, and we take it from the beginning when people were selling switched LD to selling T1s to frame relay to MPLS. And now we're taking that next step to SD-WAN and whatever comes next.
Does that mean I'm old because I know all that stuff you just named?
No, that's because you and I have known each other for a long time.
Okay. But go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you
that's
there.
okay. But that's really important. And also the other question is, especially if it's an IT director or a CIO, whatever you're talking to, what's the number one complaint you hear from your employees? What are you hearing from them? Where is their pain point right now when they're trying to do their job every day?
Yeah.
And that opens up a whole, that opens up the kimono right there.
Yeah, and maybe kind of switching gears, I mean, pitfalls, things like that you can think of from a, not a zero outages perspective, but just SD-WAN and different components and how that works and that kind of stuff that partners need to be aware of as they start selling SD-WAN.
Yeah, just to pick up on what you had mentioned earlier is that ask the customer how critical is downtime for you, and not just downtime for an internet outage or a link outage, but if there's a security issue that brings down the whole company. There was a recent news story, there's been a number of them lately, of companies that have been hit and they're down. Now, they may not be down from a circuit, it may be a security issue, but one way or another, they're down. And if they're down, they're not productive, they're losing money, and they're losing time. So that's a key aspect that you should ask every customer is, how important is uptime for you? And if it is, that opens up a whole broad list of questions about products you can sell them.
Yeah, and maybe, question there?
Do you have an idea of what percentage of customers actually have downtime and how much downtime it is? Because I'm afraid to ask and then have a customer tell me we're never down.
Yeah, so average downtime do you guys kind of see out in the industry so far, maybe?
Yeah, I would say every customer's had some downtime. It may not have been recent, so the more recent it is, the fresher in the memory, the more critical it is. But if you look at the news today, and we have people all the time that are coming to us, in the past year, especially with regards to ransomware issues. We had a dentist's office that had a ransomware issue about 2 months ago. And they came to us after having to pay $10,000 to a hacker group that basically infiltrated their accounting system. And so they lost access to all of their patients, all of their billing, and they had to pay this rent. So this is happening to small businesses. It's not just big businesses that are getting hit. This is a critical issue for every business.
Yeah, and I think you're going to comment on that, and then I got a follow-up with you as well. So.
Yeah, I wanted to tee on this. I was an account manager for a long time, and in this local market in Fort Lauderdale, and we had a pretty famous outage that lasted 3 days. I know Ron's shaking his head because he was there with me when we all kind of survived that event. But we had a major CO in downtown Fort Lauderdale that went down, and it was down for 3 days. And every single customer that was registered in that switch was down, and everyone who popped through that switch to process their voice and data network was down. So it's not about an annual thing, it's about a once in your career thing. If you can be down for 3 days and survive that, great. But you never know when someone's gonna come through with a backhaul and hit a piece of fiber when they're in a construction project 2 blocks down. These things, when they come up, it's almost like insurance, right? Your house catches on fire, your house may never catch on fire, but you're gonna have insurance just in case it does. And that's a lot of what we do, because people can't afford to be down. At the end of the day, you're not paying your employees to sit there in their desks and do nothing, twiddle their thumbs, especially if you're a call center or any kind of big active environment where you cannot afford to pay an hourly employee to sit there with nothing to do. And worse so than that, if your customers can't get to you, who are they going to next?
Yeah.
Where's your competition doing? Because if your competition's up and you're not, that's a lost opportunity.
Yeah, and maybe also, yeah,
I was
I'm
just
sorry.
gonna go on, and it's not even the horrendous outages that customers look at, but what are their employees facing every day when they're just trying to do their job at their desktop? How are their applications running? Are they seeing a lot of slowness in there? Are they seeing times when they can't even access those apps? Those are the things that we're now seeing from customers. But, and it doesn't have to be, I agree with what Erica just said about that, it doesn't have to be a major company, and how much are they losing? Think about a pizza place, okay? And if a pizza place can't get their orders in from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock, how much money that guy is losing at that place? And those are all potential customers, every single one of those. So if you look at it from that standpoint, it's not the overwhelm, the 3-day, which was an absolute nightmare, but it's the everyday piece of business that they're losing.
I think one quick question I would say is, you would ask, can you survive an outage? That would be a quick question to ask. If you're sitting across the desk from a CTO or CIO, can you survive an outage? And how long of an outage can you survive? That brings a lot of questions to mind, and you can have a conversation after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe switching gears a little bit from a costing perspective a little bit. I mean, sometimes I think customers automatically assume these are now internet circuits, so it should cost a lot less, right? And sometimes it's a cost play, but sometimes it's not. Maybe you want to spend just a minute talking about costing a little bit, and I'll switch over to Fusion next. But is it always something that saves money going down an SD-WAN path?
Not always. It's a big upgrade to your network. So a lot of times you're adding additional services, you're adding additional network elements. So a lot of times there is an additional cost. Sometimes we can reduce the overhead by maybe the way the configuration is written, back to my inbound topology, or maybe we're replacing an MPLS network that the cost associated with the management of that network is cumbersome because the integration time with the carrier and opening the tickets and processing is hurting your IT team, and that support requirement is more than what you're willing to spend. So there might be a cost savings, but not always. I'd say probably more times than not, if there's not a cost savings. But what you're adding in value and what you're saving by not losing those customer opportunities or those experience opportunities. If you onboard an employee and you train an employee, there's a huge investment there for them to have an unhappy experience and then leave your organization because the applications weren't processing correctly. So all of that investment to be in business, to get there and not be in business, is what you're saving.
Yeah, and maybe Fusion, from your perspective, I mean, from a cost savings, what do you typically see? Is there typically something there? Is it something that typically is a break even, is good enough, or just with all the added benefits? What's your take on that?
Yeah, there usually is added benefits when you kind of encompass the the savings from the reliability and never being down, things like that. But yeah, it's not. We do a lot of hybrid, a lot of kind of mixed networks as part of our deployment. So it's not quite there's different elements there, but I guess at the end of the day, right, it's saving the customer, the client, cost savings if they're never going down, and we're adding that redundancy, that level of reliability.
Yeah, and since you've got the mic real quick, we'll kind of close out with everybody on the panel with this question. But in your opinion, one or two things people should think of, maybe one or two things that just naturally should say, hey, this is a Fusion Connect type of an opportunity. What would you say to that?
Say best of breed, multi-vendor approach to the technology, full end-to-end management solution. For what's best for our clients.
So you'll consult with those clients and figure out what works best, not necessarily just a single vendor type, but you'll look at the 3 or 4 different options you have and kind of figure out what works best. Is that what I'm hearing?
Look at the network as a whole, all the initiatives they have, where their business is going, what are their, everything, and then find the best services, best platform, right, to satisfy the needs.
Good. And next up, Fat Pipe. I mean, what should people just naturally gravitate? 1 or 2 things just quickly off the top of the head you think that people should think of Fat Pipe for?
So anyone who's hosting their own DNS should absolutely register with FatPipe. We are by far the most efficient if you are inbound load balancing to your DNS servers. If you have a large remote workforce is another opportunity where we're a key component. But really, anyone who's looking for a higher level of performance with a lesser cost of operation, that's really where we hit the nail on the head. So efficiencies is our first play.
So efficiency and DNS is kind of what I'm hearing. So
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
And next up, from a zero outages perspective, what are 1 or 2
everywhere.
top of mind type things that a partner should leave and think about for zero outages?
Sure. So our 3 primary products are FlexPrem, which is the SD-WAN solution, FlexPoint, which is our remote access and endpoint solution, and FlexStream, which is our secure circuit solution. So those are the 3 primary aspects that we focus on.
Good. And last but not least, Ariaka,
I'm going to throw
Ron
three
Beer, what do you
out.
think?
I'm going to throw 3 out to you. Application performance, reliability, and as I said, one hand to shake.
One hand to shake or one bag to pack or?
One fist to bump.
Well, good. We'll give it up for these folks here.
Thank you.